for Zoom to come on. I'll just say again that we're going to look at H81, which is a bill that is actually the first bill that was referred to our committee back in sometime in January, and we were all excited when that bulletin board got something stuck to it. And we're gonna be taking testimony over the next couple of days from people who have expressed an interest in testifying. We will hear not until tomorrow from the Legislative Council who drafted the bill, just because of scheduling conflicts. But we did have Representative Sims available today and asked her if she would come in and introduce the bill. So I'll turn it over to you and let you spend as much time as you're able to on it. Thank you.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Chair and Committee. Representative Catherine Sims from Orleans 4, representing Albany, Craftsbury, Glover, and Greensboro, and excited to be here to talk with you all about H81, an act relating to the fair repair of agricultural equipment. And so the purpose of this bill is to require original equipment manufacturers of agriculture and forestry equipment to make available on free and reasonable terms the parts, tools, manuals, firmware, software, diagnostic materials, all the stuff needed to fix their products. So if you're like me, you've probably had a phone or a computer or even like a coffee maker or a hot water heater break recently, and you know how difficult it can sometimes be to find the parts and the information that you need to fix it. You know, it used to be that like all of our products were easily repairable with parts that you could find anywhere. But more and more companies are putting up barriers, legal, physical, and often digital, that prevent consumers from fixing the products that they own and making you go to the manufacturer or an authorized dealer in an effort to increase their bottom line. And, you know, I believe that if you own something and it breaks, you should have the opportunity to fix it or bring it to a local repair shop and know that they can get the parts and information they need to fix it. So this bill seeks to address that issue. And this bill is particularly focused on repairing agriculture and forestry equipment because unfair repair practices are really a particular problem for foresters and farmers and loggers, where, you know, time is often of the essence. So more and more modern equipment, tractors, skid steers, telehandlers, harvesters, balers, everything really runs on software. And this new technology, which is like super helpful in so many ways, does mean that manufacturers can lock down the repair process, forcing a farmer or a logger to rely on their manufacturer branded technicians to fix their stuff. So as one farmer said to me the other day, like, anything that I owned, you know, that was made before the 1990s, I could do everything on it. I could fix any part. And actually talked to a logger the other day, and he said, yeah, most of my equipment is old enough that it's like a sledgehammer that just solves whatever I need. But, you know, since then, you know, every year more and more progressively, you know, there is more and more technology in it. And, you know, this farmer said to me, it creates like this diagnostic firewall where like you can't touch it, it shuts down, and you can't work on it until you have the right code. And, you know, if you can't diagnose the problem, you can't fix it. Or maybe you can fix it, but if you don't have that magic code to tell the, you know, telehandler that it's fixed, you're out of luck. And, you know, waiting for an authorized tech that can sometimes be days or weeks, you know, creates delays that can be really costly for farmers or loggers who, you know, have really finite windows for planting, harvesting, or, you know, getting the logs out while we've had those few days when things have been frozen this winter. You know, the saying, like, you got to make hay when the sun shines. And so having to wait to get your equipment back online is costly, not only in terms of dollars, but often impacting crops. And so, you know, what does this bill do? This bill would require original equipment manufacturers to make available the parts, tools, and service materials. So the bill defines agriculture and forestry equipment that would be covered by the law. It would require that any equipment sold or used that the manufacturer shall make available the documentation, the parts, the tools for the purposes of diagnosis, maintenance, and repair of that equipment, and make that available to independent repair providers and owners. And it requires that all of those things be made available on fair and reasonable terms. And, documentation means like the manual, the diagram, the reporting output, the service code descriptions, the schematics, the codes, all the stuff that you need. And fair and reasonable terms mean that the cost and terms would be fair to both parties, the consumer and also the manufacturer. And basically the bill holds that if a manufacturer fails to provide this stuff, that would be considered deceptive trade practices. And then the Attorney General would have the authority to make rules, conduct investigations, and bring civil actions against manufacturers that fail to comply with the law. I do want to make sure to note that there are limits in place as a part of this bill and a part of existing statute. So nothing in this bill would require an original manufacturer to divulge a trade secret to an owner or an independent service provider. So this is not about infringing on trade secrets in any way. And also, I think important to note that manufacturers are not liable for bad repair. That, there's existing bodies of negligence and tort law that governs the assignment of liability. And like, if you tamper with something and you break it, like the manufacturer is not liable for that damage with equipment that has been tampered with. What the bill does do is inject competition into the repair market by providing farmers, loggers, independent techs with access to the materials that they need to fix stuff at a fair, reasonable price. Just one last thing I would want to note, because folks may have heard about the MOU with John Deere around this topic, where John Deere entered into a memorandum of understanding with the Farm Bureau to provide a right to repair farm equipment. And certainly really glad that John Deere is, I think in this conversation, acknowledging that there is an issue around this topic and engaging in conversations. That said, I think some have called the John Deere's MOU a kind of pinky promise rather than a definitive solution. And, some of the specific concerns around that agreement are that, it doesn't have any guarantee in it that the tools be made affordable. Just that they are available. It would allow the company to walk away from that agreement within 30 days of providing notice. So that's not a long-term guarantee that something in statute would provide. It also lacks enforcement mechanisms that, if farmers were denied access to the repair materials, there's no enforcement or accountability mechanism. And I think maybe most importantly, it only applies to one manufacturer. And, a lot of people have green tractors, but there are other colored tractors out there too. And it doesn't, as this bill does, include forestry equipment. So, our bill would be a comprehensive right to repair solution that ensures a fair and reasonable price, and it would apply to all equipment manufacturers of both agriculture and forestry equipment. This is a growing movement. I think my latest I saw was, over 20 states are considering right to repair legislation this year. And so that's, really exciting. And I think this is an opportunity for Vermont to be a real leader around, especially the kind of working landscape businesses that are so vital to Vermont today and our future. And so thank you for the opportunity to talk with you about this bill. Happy to answer any questions and glad that you have Ledge counsel in later to answer all the technical questions about the language in the bill.
So realizing that you may need to rush off back to your committee or to another appointment, but that you did offer, while we have Representative Sims, any questions for her? Representative Levitt.
We talked about this in the hall a tiny bit, but I'm looking at an email I got. They're saying, and I don't know anything about this, this act will fundamentally alter ag equipment dealers' business model, potentially putting them out of business. And they're also saying that there could be sort of illegal tampering. So can you speak to that?
Yeah, so I think we have a long history here in Vermont and of like people working on stuff, and it was going just fine. There was a robust, local repair industry, and as I said, my farmer down the road used to fix everything by himself and did that competently and capably. And if something went wrong, the manufacturer is not liable for that. Our manufacturers have used a sort of new technology as an excuse or a way to sort of block what has happened for centuries. And again, manufacturers are protected legally from botched repairs, in their contracts. And so this doesn't change that existing liability protection.
Okay.
I think we want to ask,
And lawyers are great people to ask those
right, when
questions.
we ask about illegal tampering. Representative Graham and then Representative O'Brien.
So my question is, who's going to figure out what's fair and reasonable cost?
Yeah, so the bill talks through the sort of cost and terms piece around what this bill would require, and I think hopefully Ledge Council can kind of walk through that with you in detail. But it requires that it be affordable to farmers and loggers, and also accurately account for the costs that the manufacturer has in producing those materials.
Representative O'Brien?
Representative Sims, I'm just wondering, so if this bill passed, would it really force some of these big manufacturers to nationally abide by this, or could potentially they just sort of say, we're pulling out of the Northeast because, we make so much more money with John Deere combines in Kansas and the Midwest?
I think that certainly would be a good question for the manufacturers, but I think, there's a lot of John Deere dealers here. And I think, the Vermont market probably provides, while a small but important part of business for our manufacturers. This would cover both new equipment, but also existing equipment, and would obligate manufacturers to provide all of those diagnostic materials, tools, and parts to current owners of equipment. And so I think that obligation would continue to exist no matter what. And I think we've seen that, actions at the state level can have national implications, for the good. Colorado has passed a bill around automated wheelchairs, that was successful around right to repair. And I think the hope is, tackle a slice at a time, and then it creates national scale change where manufacturers make this stuff available so that consumers can fix their stuff. And I think that's a good thing that we want to protect everyone's ability to fix stuff.
Representative Lipsky. I'm sorry, John.
Oh, I just wondered, do any New England states have a similar right to repair law?
New York passed the Consumer Electronics Right to Repair bill last session. And I do not know of, and you'll have some national experts can probably speak better to the kind of national landscape. I think there was another state that was considering an agriculture-focused bill that may have passed in the last 2 weeks. But the national experts who are coming in later can provide a better landscape about picture of what's happening elsewhere. But again, this is a national movement, but I think we have an opportunity to help lead the way around, especially business sectors that we know are really active and important here in Vermont, where we also have very limited sunny, warm days to make hay.
Representative Lipsky.
I want to thank Representative Sims for caring so much about working landscape, big tool owners. I have I have experience, something may be painted green, but it wasn't made here. It was made with Swedish or Finnish, as in Finland, forestry equipment. Their harvesters, processors, and forwarders are all Scandinavian.
Yeah.
I own Swedish equipment sold by Komatsu, sold here in the States, bought out, Valmet, Rotna, and others. When that screen, and I've had a green one too, when that went black, I had to speed dial Sweden, or there was some genius up in the North Woods of Ontario who was the only one who could talk. You go to Nortrax, they're now out of business, but was the big Northeast regional John Deere dealer. We don't know how to fix it. And it's happened across the line. You can get a manual and have they'll mimeograph or print, but the language is in Swedish, It's tough. One of my ex-wives is fluent in Swedish.
One of my ex-wives.
Scratch that from the record. No, and I'll go to Hanukkah and say, can you help me? No.
That's why you divorce on friendly terms with everybody.
Anyway, my point is, it's a real challenge, but it's no guarantee. Because and for Rodney or Henry, there's Klaus, there are a lot of huge German agriculture, farming pieces that are unbelievable. And these aren't $500,000 pieces. They might be $1 million plus pieces. So it's a challenge for farmers or loggers who are trying to produce in a limited window of opportunity harvest.
Yeah, and so, I think that's the issue we're trying to address, right? When that screen goes blank and you can't do anything right now without calling the one person who, for some particular brands might be like the one person in Indianapolis who's like authorized to work on that piece of machinery, and want to create more competition and more options so that you can go down to the person who you work with on other equipment down in town, and they have the same ability to get the, special diagnostic and, access the parts and get the code to update it so that you can be back up and running, have more options to get back up and running than we do now. And, I was at a farmer meeting the other day and they're talking about, well, sometimes I go to the internet and I can pirate this code. And it's like, we don't want people to have workarounds like that to get their machine up and running. Really want, or I heard from, one, has access to a person who went off the clock, will lend his machine. We want to protect people's ability. I believe that we have the, within our Vermont community, the skilled independent repair folks to do the work on the machines. And we want to avoid weird workarounds and protect the right to use those skills to fix stuff and get it back up and running when you need it. So you can keep baling that hay or haul those skids out. And, we all depend on the food and the wood products that you all make.
Okay, any other questions about the bill or the intent? Okay. All right, well, thank you, Representative Sims. We will, welcome to stay, but we will hear some testimony tomorrow. Laura, can you update us on that?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
tomorrow we'll be in at 9 to hear an overview of the Conservation Board.
Okay, yep.
And then the Land Trust is coming in after. And then we will hear some more testimony on H81. And then we have Ed Larson coming in, and that carries us to lunch.
Okay.
And then we'll hear from Ledge Council after the floor tomorrow.
Okay, good. So as it relates to this bill, then we've got some testimony scheduled for tomorrow morning. And I know a number have it seems like representatives of the repair industry have reached out asking for an opportunity to testify. And I know, Laura, you've been trying to make those connections. So are we getting people slotted in?
Yes,
Some of that tomorrow, some Thursday?
mostly Thursday.
Okay, all right. All right, good. So thank you all for your work today. And I will just say that the pace is probably going to be picking up over the second half of the session compared to what it was in the first half. So we'll be, it's a 17-week session in theory. Sometimes it goes shorter, sometimes it goes longer. We've already finished 9 weeks, so we're past or at the halfway point anyway. And I know that there are a number of bills that we haven't even looked at. So we want to speed things along, and you'll notice that it may not seem any more hectic, but we'll be trying to get testimony, get the committee's thoughts, and then see what bills we can move this session. So, thank you all. We'll see you tomorrow. Yeah.
Just a couple thoughts. One, Laura might want to get in touch with Linda Lehman because last year we heard a bunch of testimony on right to repair. And there's definitely a witness list there that might be interesting to reference. And I can't really remember, Henry and Rodney might remember, and Heather, why we took a bunch of testimony on this, but the whole bill just kind of ran out of steam. And I can't remember, if it was, what the reason was. Maybe you guys remember.
Well, if you can't remember, I expect us.
Might have been time.
I have COVID brain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
Might have been that, yeah. Okay, well, good. Thank you for that, John. We may have already, I know we've heard from a lot of people, so who are interested in testifying. There is, by the way, written testimony that has come in. Maybe you've gotten some of the written testimony already in email, but it'll be posted if it's not already on our committee page.
Got a lot of emails.
Yeah.
Your mind's been flooded.
So that's a
with this, right?
resource.
Yeah.